As I've talked with students from various schools in Abbotsford, I keep hearing people saying, wow, those planes over at Chinook Air really look nice. Well, let's see if there's more to it than that. Hello my friends, welcome back to Late Departure. I am Adam, and today we're continuing on my search to find the right flight school. As you know, I've been searching all over the place to find a flight school that really meets my needs. And in the past few episodes, we've been turning our gaze over to Abbotsford. We'll be talking a little bit more about Abbotsford today. In particular, we're talking about Chinook Air. Now, Chinook Air, for the most part, from a lot of people that I've talked with, in addition to the students, Chinook Air is famous for, having hangars for their planes. Their planes are super plush and very nice, and basically everyone around says, wow, they have really nice planes there. But of course, there's always two sides to every coin. And on the other side, a lot of students said that the reason why other students didn't choose Chinook was because of the slightly more expensive prices. Now, keep in mind that for most of the flight schools, the prices are fairly similar, but there are ones like, for example, Sealand Air, where you'll find slightly higher prices because they're flying on newer Diamond aircraft. And of course, at Chinook, they're flying on slightly nicer aircraft there. So of course, there are these exceptions, but if you have a little bit of extra money and you're going for something like that, maybe it's something to consider. So in terms of plane and instructor availability, the students that are attending there are really happy about that. They said that the schedule, unlike some other places where it's very strict kind of booking, where you go online and you book your flights and it's really tight trying to find spaces, at Chinook, apparently there's a system where, in addition to that style of system, they also have a system where you can go and talk with the administrators or the managers and tell them your availability, and they actually provide a schedule on a weekly basis. So they kind of decide when people are coming in. And I guess this can be good if you give them your availabilities and they slot you into certain slots and whatnot. But it is a little different than some of the other ones. Most of the students who are going there say that this is a really good system that's really worked well for them. This is spanning all the way from part-time students to full-time students who said that they can easily get 2-hour booking slots, 4-hour booking slots. Sometimes in any time between like a week or two in advance, which is quite below average, because for most schools you're looking at least 3 to 4 weeks or more, maybe a month booking in advance to get your flight scheduled. In terms of the amount of instructors, the students said that there are a lot of instructors that they didn't experience a lot of instructor turnover rate or anything like that. The instructors, for the most part, stayed with the students I talked with for their entire training duration. And of course, most of them are still training right now. And that's a good thing. It means that, they're being managed properly, that the management is making sure that the instructors that have a certain amount of time until they go off to the big leagues are staying with the students who have a little bit more time to train. I like that. It shows that they're not just throwing any instructor with any student kind of thing. In addition to that, just some of the students, I'm reading their comments, they said they've been having such a good time. Their flying improved a lot. And really the biggest thing was the instructors. They said the instructor quality was just really outstanding there. So that's something that is overall a really good review. And it's something that, you want to hear. You want to hear that they're good instructors because, like I've said before, instructors really can make or break your training. They can make it a really, really good time, or they can make an absolute horrible time. So make sure that you find good instructors. One of the students that I interviewed mentioned that that student's previous experience at some other schools, like for example, Langley Flying School, there was a much higher turnover rate, which made that student quite unhappy because it meant that they were never able to stay with one instructor for an extended period of time. However, at Chinook, they didn't mention having that kind of problem. So that's good to hear. One thing to keep in mind about that, though, is, again, right now it's COVID. We don't have a huge instructor turnover rate really anywhere right now because there aren't that many jobs in the airlines for these instructors to go off to. So if you're watching this video and it's maybe 2022 or it's some time after COVID has gotten remedied a bit in Canada, then you might want to consider that this might not be true for your experience. In terms of mandatory things that you have to buy, like supplemental materials and whatnot, the students said, well, they do have a ground school package there, which again, most ground schools or most flight schools do in general. They don't force you to buy anything. However, one thing that the students really liked, especially in compared to other flight schools, is apparently Chinook gives these extra binders that contain all sorts of things from POHs to the aircrafts to special guides that they write for students that the students said that they really liked. And one thing that I'd like to just bring up is my experience at some of the other schools, from what I've heard, is that the POH, the handbooks for the airplanes, are not always free. So some schools, you'll go there and they'll charge you 10, 20 bucks for a copy of it, which essentially all they're doing is just photocopying something they already have, and it costs them maybe a couple bucks to photocopy in terms of paper. But the fact that it's part of the ground school package at Chinook is pretty good. Now, in terms of forcing students to do ratings that they may or may not really want, that was not the case at Chinook. They said up until now, they haven't had that kind of experience, and that Chinook is very clear and transparent on what's expected of you, what you need in the future, but they don't force you to pursue, for example, like night ratings or float ratings or anything like that, if that's not what you're in the market for. So is it pay as you go or is it pay up front? And this, as you know, is one of the biggest factors for me personally, especially after I've heard so many students say, if a school has a pay up front lump sum payment, that you should run the other way. However, that does seem to be the case at Chinook. So there is an upfront fee, and it depends on, I guess, what you're doing, but there's like an administration fee, there's a ground school briefing fee that you might have to pay up front, and all of this can add up to a few $1,000s or more. So that's something that, again, when I hear that, it's kind of a red flag for me, but you know, you have to kind of weigh the situation. So is it going to be worth it? Are you absolutely sure that you're going to be able to get up and fly? Are you going to be able to get planes? That's a really, really big thing to keep in mind when you have something like a pay up front deposit. Now, again, this is something I just want to make absolutely clear for me is a red flag, but you know, it's something that you should definitely consider and judge for yourself. In terms of overcharging for ground time, the students I talked with said that wasn't the case at Chinook. To the contrary, similar to some other schools, if anything, the instructors would undercharge for ground time because the instructors, you know, they want to be considerate of the students' times, and apparently they're just very reasonable in terms of saying like, well, you already knew that, or, you know, we're just talking about something. I'm not just going to charge you if we're just discussing something in aviation or something to that effect. And I like that. I like that they're really considering the plight of the students. It's an expensive thing to do. It's expensive training, and to have instructors understand that and try to help students along the way so that their dollar can stretch further, I always think that's a great thing indeed. Now, in terms of maintenance, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, they do have a really good maintenance program there. They have in-house maintenance. All their aircraft are hangared, so even in the winter time, you don't have to worry about snow or frost or ice on the planes, which doesn't really happen that much in BC anyways, but even so, it's good to know that the planes are protected. It means that they're not going to be taking as much damage from the elements, from weather. So that also contributes to the fact that Chinook has these really nice planes, and that's what everyone, not just the Chinook students, but people from other local flying schools that see the Chinook planes also talk about. In terms of weather limitations, weather minima, there doesn't seem to be anything that's too different from most schools. They follow the Transport Canada guidelines, of course. The students said that they're not quite as bold as some of the other places like Principal Aviation or Air or whatever it was there, but pretty standard things like you can't take off with more than a 10-knot crosswind and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of them showing you the show pony airplane to get you in the door, well, they're all really nice airplanes. So this is one of the examples where you know, instead of just having one nice airplane and having the rest kind of junker airplanes, Chinook Air seems to have a whole fleet of really nice airplanes, so you don't need to worry about that there. In terms of helping students achieve their goals, the students said that overall, Chinook was really good. The instructors are really good at helping the students sit down and map out their goals, and really in a way that made it seem like they care, which of course is very important because, again, this is something that you'd hope would be the case everywhere at every flight school, but more often than not, it isn't. So you really want to make sure that the school cares, and it seems like Chinook really does. All right, so that's it for Chinook Air. I hope this is helpful for those of you who are looking possibly to fly out in Abbotsford. For me personally, you know, like the planes are a bit more expensive, and even though the costs are not too different throughout most of the flight schools, it is definitely a factor that I need to consider because I want to make sure that I can fly as much as I can for the money that I have. Mind you, if you have a ton of money and you just want to have like the nicest planes and you don't really care about that, by all means, yeah, definitely Chinook sounds like a great place. And also in terms of the fact that the staff is just really friendly, that they try to help everyone out, that scheduling is really easy. And remember, that's really the bottom line. Can you get in a plane? Can you get up to fly? Because if you can't get up, you can't get your hours, you can't get your licenses, and nothing really happens, right? Well, that's it for today. Thank you again for joining me on my late departure. I hope that you have a wonderful day and you're safe. If you're out flying, you go out and fly and have fun. And remember, it's never too late. See you next time.